In today's business world, change is the only constant, and mastering transformation is the ultimate key to success. Welcome to Shift and Thrive. I'm your host, Natalie Nathanson. Each week, we'll bring you conversations with CEOs who delve into how they successfully drove critical change in their organization. This show is sponsored by Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service B2B marketing agency. Welcome to another special edition episode on Shift and Thrive as part of our go-to-market mini-series. If you're a CEO or business leader wondering how your go-to-market strategy needs to evolve right now to meet today's market realities, this episode is for you. Today's guest is a go-to-market strategist with 25 years of expertise across sales, marketing, and corporate strategy, with a depth of focus in the market research and data analytics fields. She has led critical initiatives in areas including sales enablement and product commercialization, consistently driving revenue growth and enhancing operational efficiency. She recently took on a new role as head of growth and strategy at Official AI, where she's helping shape the company's direction at the intersection of AI and business innovation. Cheryl Jordan-Aguilera, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And, you've had such a dynamic career across go-to-market. And I know you've worked in early stage startups and more mature environments. And one of the things that, really stood out when we spoke previously was kind of how you've built these full revenue ecosystems. And one of the stories that caught my attention was your time at GutCheck, and that you were there during a period of major transformation, and that the work you did really helped lay the groundwork for some of the company's future success. So can you take us through that chapter? What were the business challenges that you were solving? And then, how did you go about evolving the go-to-market?
Sure. So GutCheck is definitely holds a dear place in my heart. It was a great 4 years, and joining as employee, probably 30 or 40 something, on a trajectory to have, over 200 employees. I joined as an individual contributor on the sales team to lead sales for GutCheck on the West Coast, and quickly moved up into the leadership of the organization just because I had so much experience in market research and technology and how those two work together for large brands. And as we were building kind of the ecosystem to support those initiatives at GutCheck, with bringing on new clients, really addressing their business needs, wowing them with the insights that GutCheck could provide that were both quantitative and qualitative in nature, which was very unique at the time to be able to do both at once. We found that we needed to start building out more customer support, account management functions in addition to the straight selling. It was really important to our model to really take care of our clients, make sure we were answering the right kinds of questions, and then where necessary, continue to dig into different questions that arise from your research projects and the insights that you learn, because sometimes you learn more and then all of a sudden that produces more questions. So we did build out quite a large team eventually. So, it consisted of a sales organization with probably 10 to 20 people at any given time. And then an account management team of about the same size, really taking the aftermarket, nurturing and care approach to helping those clients continue to work with us. So, it was definitely where I learned the hard way with how to build out the right infrastructure to support this type of technology software sale with a service component to it.
What would you say were the biggest kind of keys to success, and whether there were things that kind of went right in the process or didn't, but you learned from it? Are there kind of a few things that come to mind?
Yeah, I think one of the cornerstones of why GutCheck was so successful is because they hired not only for your technical and professional experience and expertise, but they really wanted to hire people who were cultural fits for the organization. And so they had this motto called the Give a Shit Index, or
Okay.
how gassy are you? And that's something that stuck with me in my hiring practices now, because I often find myself looking at how how technically successful or professional someone is, but then I'm also looking a layer deeper to say, hey, is this going to match with the organization and the vibe we're going with? And maybe it's because I'm on the West Coast and these things matter more to us, but that's where I learned it from. And I just thought that gassy index was one of the things that really made that organization successful. Um,
I like that. I think makes me think of in EOS, like Entrepreneurs Operating System, they have GWC, the like get it, wants it, capacity to do it, as like the three levers for, not specific to sales in that case, but across the organization,
yeah,
looking at your employees. And I think sometimes things like, alignment to values can feel like lip service,
yes,
but it really is so critical, and both in the hiring process, but then kind of over time, making sure that people are kind of evolving as the company evolves and, all of that.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that organization was a lot. It was more than like just showing up every day and like punching the clock. It was a lot more about being invested in um, and believing in what we were doing. And so um, that was definitely the foundation for a successful, go-to-market organization.
Were there any kind of challenges or resistance to kind of the approach you were looking to roll out, or was it really kind of all hands on deck? We just need to kind of find all the right people and lots of them.
Um, yeah, I think overall, because everyone had a mindset that was like shared success, there was a lot of collaboration and problem solving together, which I think contributed to the success. And there's always kind of a push and pull between different departments. And so, sales and marketing kind of push and pull against each other. And then so do sales and then like account management, depending on how organizations are working together. So there's definitely some negotiation about who owned what and which process. And but what I liked about it is that we ironed it all out and like created playbooks so that teams were really clear on what their role was, what the expectations were, and what success looked like, and then how the other team had the same thing, but how they complemented each other and really kept the client as the focus. And that was really what our goal was, to keep the client as the focus. So um, there was a lot of collaboration, but there was also some, I would say, healthy pushback in places as we got the balance right.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm curious if there's, anything you would approach differently today if you were kind of faced with the same situation.
Um, I think as you continue to age, you get more mature in your thinking and you have that many more experiences that lets you stay a little bit more even keel and like think through things more rather than react. And I think as I look back, I was so like passionate about what we were doing that I think I was a little intense at times, and maybe that wasn't to the benefit of everyone else. And so I think now there's a more of a calmness that I can come to the table with. That's like, okay, well, let's think through this. We don't have to be, emotionally invested to the nth degree and like and overreact. And so I think these days, I would approach things with more curiosity rather than judgment.
Yep, yep. I think it is certainly a case where, like, we all learn those kind of lessons over the years. I think you made me think of an example when I was building a new sales enablement function in an organization from the ground up, and I was just so excited by the initiative and what I was doing, that I think now back on it, like, a couple of decades later, of what it must have felt like for the salespeople as recipients of it. And like, yes, there was
Mhm.
a lot of great content in there and all of that, but I was not sufficiently putting myself in the shoes of the salesperson and everything else that was coming at them, and, the expectations and all of that. So I think that's definitely an important lesson to learn over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to put yourself in the frontline sales role. if you haven't been in it or haven't been in it for a while, because I've definitely had that experience where I worked on sales enablement, and I thought I understood completely what it was like to stand in someone's shoes. But there's always things to learn. So I guess it keeps us humble.
Yes, I'm a big advocate of the concept of like the rotation programs, and at small companies it doesn't have to be formal, but like
Mhm.
especially coming from the marketing world, that every marketer should have some experience, exposure to selling in a way that you don't get if you've only kind of sat squarely in the marketing realm. It just makes you such a better marketer.
Yes, I completely agree with that because it kind of strips away some of the fluff to get to some of the practical, like rubber hits the road needs that if you understand as a marketer, a sales loves you.
Yes. I also think about the common language, and marketers can have the frustration of, why isn't sales following up diligently on all of my leads? But then from the sales hat, it's, well, maybe they weren't necessarily good leads to begin with, and so it's one of those cases where there's often no right or wrong, but each person's coming from their own purview, and once you can see the other person's perspective, you have more understanding, more empathy, and ultimately can work better together.
I completely agree. And I've been fortunate now to work on both sides of that sales and marketing fence. And I have a lot more empathy for both sides and a lot more understanding of what's driving certain behaviors. And those behaviors are what drive sales and marketing crazy about each other. So that was insightful when I pieced that together. And I was like, aha, okay, I get this now.
For sure, yes. Hey, this is Natalie, your Shift and Thrive host. After chatting with lots of CEOs, one thing is crystal clear. Leveling up your company means having a killer go-to-market strategy. That's what my crew at Magnitude Consulting does every day. If you're trying to step up your marketing game, whether it's strategizing, accelerating your pipeline, expanding into new markets, or getting into AI and automation, let's talk. No pitch, no pressure, just good conversation. Visit shiftandthrivepodcast.com/Natalie to schedule a time. Can't wait to connect. I want to talk about a different kind of transformation, so shifting gears a bit, but talk about M&A activity
Hmm.
and maybe an example where things didn't go quite as smoothly in an environment that you were in. I think
Yeah.
I've had my own experiences with kind of M&A and, what could go right, what could go wrong. But can you share, what that was for you and kind of what you learned from that process?
Yeah, yeah. So following my time at GutCheck, I wanted to stay on the cutting edge of, innovation because that's the part of market research that always interested me the most. Like, what new thing can we use or a new insight that can help drive business effectively? And so I joined a startup that was also doing kind of a mix of quantitative and qualitative research, but it was in more of a agile manner and a little bit more self-service. And so I joined um, a startup, as employee 10, and really worked on this potential product, and then started helping to build out the sales and marketing functions of how we would position this in the market. And 6 months into it, this company was acquired by, one of the largest market research firms in the country. Um, and so that merger and acquisition experience taught me a lot. Um, if I could go back in time, I would have been a lot more, opinionated and forceful about some of my recommendations. But I don't think I believed in my voice at that point. And I thought, "Oh, people know better than me. They know what to do. They've done this a lot." And it turns out, um, I did know better, and some of my suggestions would have made a much bigger difference to how the product ended up working. So essentially, this really cool product was acquired, and then we were left alone for the first year, and then kind of forced integration with the rest of the products in the following years. But nobody had a strategy for how all these different acquired products could work together. And so that was when I took the opportunity to get more involved in like a corporate strategy role, because I had a strong sense of how these different products could work together to create an amazing ecosystem for customers. Um, and there were good things that came out of those opportunities for me personally, just getting to work in different organizations within the company. But for the actual product that I had come on board with and then entered this company with, that product was eventually discontinued. Uh, and I still think that was a shame because there is so much potential that was there. We just didn't have the buy-in of the larger organization. And then that's kind of where I look back at times when I could have been more um, emphatic about some suggestions, but more importantly, built a better business case for why a different approach might be more effective. So that was definitely a learning experience.
I'm curious to ask, like, what was the reason that the company had made the acquisition, and like, why didn't they do something with it right away? I wanted to unpack that a bit.
Yeah, so the company, the small company that I was at was part of a collective of small companies. And so that collective got purchased. And I think there were reasons with each small company's products of what they thought they could do together. But some of the other products were more developed, and had been more mature in their selling strategies and in their product development. Like they'd been around for like 8 or 10 years. So they naturally took on more of the leadership role among the product development organization. And then that left some of the newer, just getting started products like the one I was working on, uh, kind of left behind. And I should also say the founder of that company left after the acquisition. And so I think that that leadership vacuum needed to be filled. And I should have stepped up more than I did.
Yeah, hindsight's always 2020.
Oh, yeah.
I think part of the reason I asked the question is I do see a lot of cases where, there's much to be desired with kind of the go-to-market side of an acquisition. And I find often, marketing is brought in late. The go-to-market strategy is thought of a bit late, and it's easy for things to get lost in the shuffle.
Absolutely. And, I think there has to be somebody involved with the product marketing, that there's a curiosity to like, how do all these things work? How can they work together? And I think that when you throw everybody in the deep end together, uh, and there's not enough guidance for that, then you're kind of at the will of different people's experiences and what their knowledge is. And if that's limited in the space that you work in, then that's a disadvantage. And yeah, lesson learned.
Right. Yeah, I think, the lack of maybe knowledge on the go-to-market side, or if you're acquiring for the team or the technology, like the technical team or the technology, it's easy to forget about the go-to-market side. And so then, I've been
Yeah.
in situations where, the announcements are ready to be made out to the public, but yet no one has thought about the customer communication plan, or,
Mhm.
what is your new combined message? What is your new competitive landscape? And so it can feel like a real missed opportunity, right? Just like I say, you only get to be new once, you only get to launch once and make these announcements once. And so really like putting all of your strategic efforts into what is the best way to communicate that externally and work through kind of the internal backend systems and all of that.
And I think also as a small startup company, um, we needed to be cautious about not over promising and under delivering. And we did a good job of talking about what our technology could do and how it could help uh, to the sales organization. And then they did a great job of pitching it to their clients. But then that kind of overwhelmed a very small team. And it's like totally Murphy's Law of what happens with these things, where you go out and like sell, 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 and we'll figure it out later. And that's never sat well with me. In this use case is why. because it's nothing worse to me than promising capabilities or insights to somebody and then not being able to follow through on it.
Right. I mean, someone's left holding the bag, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can say, too much demand is a good problem to have. Yes and no, right?
Yeah.
Then someone
Devils
still
in the
has to deal with
details on
that.
that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And your brand suffers, and then future customers or prospects are harder to come by.
Yep.
It has a
Yep.
real ripple effect.
Yes, it is.
So Cheryl, I'd love to shift gears a bit, and I know you've been very involved in kind of building and scaling go-to-market infrastructure. We've talked about that a bit, but would love to maybe hear, in your current environment, um, being kind of an AI native or AI first company, does it look any different on kind of the back end of things than in other environments? And, if so, how?
Yes. It's fascinating to be in an AI first organization. And we're part of a collection of startups working with Puget Sound, or sorry, Pioneer Square Labs, getting my Seattle references off. Um, and so we work side by side with other startups that are also AI first. And so that's really interesting for everybody learning from each other. It produces a very collegial environment when we learn something or find something that's helpful, like sharing that knowledge amongst all of the teams. One of the things that's very different in this organization for me is that a lot of our communication isn't on email. It's not, with, shared Google Drives or, you know, OneDrive holdings. It's a lot more real time. And so before joining officially, I had never heard of or used Notion, and that particular software has been a game changer for me in terms of updating my work style and how I collaborate with my teams. Um,
Can you
because
give us some examples of how you're using Notion and kind of the different impact that's having versus if you
yeah,
weren't?
yeah, I think in the past I would have communicated specific ideas in a PowerPoint or a Google Slides format, and walked people through very traditional and what I would even call old school now. Because in Notion, it's more of a living, breathing document where you can enable it to allow edits from teammates. Uh, it can be kind of a brainstorming area, but it can also be a place where you finalize your materials and make it publicly available to your team or a subset of the team. Uh, and so I think having something that's always available, always accessible to people, allows us to make changes in real time. And so it speeds up the conversation and it speeds up our go-to-market pace, just because we're able to discuss and move through conversations at a quicker pace. The thing that's also been interesting for me is how many decisions and information we share through Slack, because I've come from some more traditional environments where we would have been using Teams. It would have been just a more structured process, especially being in a bigger company. And so Slack has been a game changer for me just in, having the ability to move faster, but then also being able to look back in conversations and find documents that people shared in certain channels and, not having to guess at where in a program file it's saved on whose hard drive or whatever. So yeah, some of those are, I think, just like a day in the life, um, tools that help us do things faster. There's a advisor at PSL at Pioneer Square Labs, Greg Gottesman, and his challenge to the organization has been, before you start anything, ask yourself, how can AI help me? And if you're not using AI to help you in everything you do every day, you're going to get left behind. And that advice really stuck with me when I started with this organization. And it's definitely changed how I work and what questions, I ask AI and how I use it to help me structure different arguments or think about frameworks for setting things up.
Yeah, I love that question. And I would say we embody a similar kind of mindset at my organization. Uh, it was a little bit of a kind of cultural shift, or like there's some change management involved in getting that to be the default. But because I think we do need to kind of continue to look at different ways of working and all of that. The nice thing about some of the tools that you're sharing is they also continue to add in new AI features, right? So even like Slack, I know we're getting some new AI capabilities rolled out in our version, I think this week or next week. And so it's both kind of your own AI use based on your role and what you already have, and then like always staying on top of kind of the new features coming out. And do you use them? How do you use them? So it's a moving target, but in an exciting and impactful way.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's fun to be working in a team that's very collaborative and shares the learnings. And so it doesn't feel as overwhelming as it can if you feel like it's all up to you to figure out AI, because it's a big world.
Oh
And so it's
yes,
great
for
to be
sure.
working with other people who have curiosity about that, and are trying different things and aren't afraid to be curious and experiment a little bit. And that was one of the things that I learned through a course I took last year at MIT, about AI and business strategy. Great foundational class for understanding AI and the different facets of it. But it also helped me to understand more of the iterations and the process that you go through leveraging AI, because it enables you to ask questions early and often and make adjustments constantly.
I'm curious, just while you're talking about the MIT course, were there any kind of frameworks that stand out to you that came up there? And any kind of key takeaways that you think would be helpful for other executives to hear?
Um, yeah, I think the big takeaway for me was like, don't be afraid of AI. Um, it it's really about and getting questions answered for yourself, and that for me was what I was trying to get to the bottom of, because I felt like everyone was trying to tell me what AI could do for me or why I should be using AI, but I felt like there were a lot of different definitions of AI, and I was like, how are LLMs and robotics like related? How are those both AI? And there's all these different um, categories that you don't realize are part of this, what we call AI now. And some of these subcategories have been around for a long time. And especially somebody, working in data science and mass data analysis. There was a lot of like AI that we've been using for the last 10 years. It just hadn't categorized it like that. So learning about the categorization of these different um, areas and then how they can work together, and just like continuing to pursue that curiosity rather than having fear about, oh my gosh, it's changing everything. It reminds me a lot of when I first got started in the industry back in 2000 with the dot-com boom. And I worked in a startup organization in Silicon Valley, and um, we were the early days of user experience on the internet. And so we were having people go to like gap.com and put the red turtleneck sweater into the shopping basket and tell me about this experience. And I remember lots of learnings around how people will make small purchases online, but they're never going to buy furniture, cars, houses, never going to buy that off the internet, and then look where we are years later. But there was a genuine fear from people about how different the world was going to be with that technology available. And I feel like uh, what we're doing with AI now is that next big leap. Just like the dot-com boom in 2000 was a leap, this is that next really game-shifting leap that we're going through. And so you can see it happening, and so it's better to be part of it and have knowledge around it than like be scared of it and just like wish it away, because I see people doing both things.
Yep. Oh, it's amazing how much has changed in those the things that we thought were not going to happen or not realistic.
Absolutely. I
And
know
now they're
plenty of
just
people.
commonplace.
Yeah, I know plenty of people now bought several houses online, cars, then they just get delivered to your house. You don't have to go deal with anybody. Like it's just the advances that happen are amazing. And I think once people get their arms around the AI world a little bit more and see how it can be used for good, and how it can be used ethically, because there's plenty of AI companies like mine that feel strongly about those values, and I want to see those carry on in this next phase. Uh, I think we can work with AI in a really positive way to help people, and it doesn't have to be a big, scary, like demon.
I'm curious for the type of clients that your organization works with. What kind of like I guess like psychographic profiles do you see? Is it like still very much the early adopters? Is it ones that are very like AI forward? Just kind of walk me through kind of the profile.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say what everyone has in common is that they are early adopters. So they're not afraid to go first. And I think a lot of people trying to dip their toe into AI, they're interested, but then they're afraid to be the one to go first. And so there's a lot of education with our sales process about helping people understand the importance of managing their name, image, and likeness, and using official AI as, a patented technology that protects them. And so there's a lot of traction in athletics and with celebrities who have a famous likeness that they want to maintain control over. Uh, but it's also important for regular folks. Uh, like all of us at Official AI have our vaults. And in our vaults, we have the blueprint. And so the blueprint is what allows us to produce uh, images and videos of all of us doing anything we can dream of, with ethical parameters, of course. Uh, and so this is very intriguing for people who want to be able to monetize themselves, either while they're playing a sport or participating in film, or afterwards.
It's so interesting. I think we're going to see some very different use cases out there than what we've ever seen before because of some of these capabilities.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I joined was because of the patented technology that our CEO Dave Siegfried had worked on and created, uh, and that ability to really track usage and understand how to protect people. He has a background in music, the music industry, and some provenance technology that enables that security and that safety. And so being able to do that for people in this bold new world is a great thing to be part of, because you see all the horror stories every day about people taking over, or using Scarlett Johansson's voice, or taking over somebody's likeness and having them say things that they would have never said, or go to places they never have been, like this fake influencer at Wimbledon and stuff. And those types of things aren't possible within our system, because when you've registered yourself, then you get to say how it is your name, image, and likeness is used. Uh, and so you get to say if it's used for a brand purpose or if it's used for anything you can imagine. You have control over that, and then it's watermarked with our official AI logo. And so, we dream of a day where AI images are out there, but it's transparent to all of us as users that it is AI, because we believe that uh, AI can still be authentic, even if it is synthetic, if that makes sense. So,
Yes, yes. It's a nuance, but it's such an important nuance. I mean, so my company works a lot in the cybersecurity industry, and like the clients in the identity space. Like there is just so much happening there, and so much demand to kind of rethink and think through all this works, both the technologies and just the safeguards.
Yes, yes. And we love that there's companies out there trying to find all the fraudulent use cases, because that's definitely necessary. And then we're trying to kind of a proactive complement to that, being able to mark images and video from the beginning as, yes, this is AI, but it's also uh, consented by the person in the image or video.
Exactly. Exactly. We're talking a lot about, how much has changed. I'm curious to ask you if there are any like go-to-market beliefs or practices that you feel are, outdated these days, and what should replace it?
Yes. So I think I've been around long enough that I've experienced a couple of different types of sales cultures. And one that I consistently have seen over the years, especially in technology sales, is this whole Glengarry, Glen Ross, coffee is for closers stuff. And while I appreciate the sentiment that, everyone should always be selling, I've started to really steer away from uh, that kind of, I guess, do or die mentality, and like you're only good if you've only sold this much and in this amount of time. And I think it depends on what your widget is that you're selling. And I've tended towards more consultative environments where it's not about how many widgets you sell, it's about problems that you're solving. And so it does require a change in mindset about what success looks like. Uh, and I personally believe that salespeople succeed when they listen more. I think there's a habit and probably a stereotype out there that a lot of salespeople, they just talk at you and they don't really care what you think or what you have to say. And I've always tried to coach my teams to be curious, ask questions, understand the pain point, understand the issue that someone's trying to solve, and then put your thinking hat on and say, okay, amongst the products and the services we offer, how can we help them with this issue? Um, and I also have a philosophy that, people buy from people they like. And so if you're genuinely interested and curious and wanting to help somebody succeed, 9 times out of 10, that's going to take you farther than kind of this rigid, old school stick versus the carrot mentality. And so that's one of the things that I've definitely evolved away from. And that's not to say that we don't hold people accountable for goals and successes. There's definitely ways that that's measured. Um, but we just go about it in, uh, I'd say a more, I don't know if it's compassionate, but to me, it's a smarter way because you're asking people and you're hiring the kind of people who want to be problem solvers and helpers. Uh, So it's just a different take on it. And again, it does depend on like what your widget is that you're selling, because this philosophy doesn't always work with everything. But the places that I tend to gravitate towards are the places where this type of model works.
Yeah, yeah. I've certainly had that kind of experience. When you talk about listening, I think there's the you're talking about kind of the prospects, right? And listening for the pain points and be able to bring the right solution to the table. I think there's also the element around internal feedback, right? And who else do you listen to kind of internally in the organization? We've certainly had the experience with some of the more, I'd say, like old school sales leaders that don't necessarily want to take kind of ideas or directions from marketing. And in a landscape, I think, where a lot is changing, marketing has a certain purview on how do you look at the competitive landscape? How do you kind of take in feedback from kind of the market at large?
Yes.
And compare the kind of relationships that are kind of more collaborative and the ones that aren't. And we see like a very measurable difference in kind of the success of those functions.
I completely agree. And so I've had the privilege of being sit a couple times in organizations where I'm responsible for sales and for marketing, like I am right now. And it always highlights for me the importance of both, but how they're really driving some different outcomes, but in a supportive way of each other. And so I find myself on a daily basis, like I put on my marketer hat and say, okay, these are the things that we need to accomplish for the brand or for um, customers in a certain, like more of a global thinking way. And then there's a more of a day-to-day specific hat I put on for sales, like, okay, we need to be talking to this many people and have this many meetings so that we're moving this many deals through the pipeline. Uh, And it reminds me of how important that marketing layer in that role is in laying the groundwork for sales. It makes sales life so much easier when there's a strong brand in the marketplace. There's really clear value and differentiation that sales can then build on in conversations. And because it's hard to do sales without the marketing, and they both need to thrive and achieve their goals. But they're definitely different, but complementary in the right atmosphere.
I'm curious to ask, you know, under kind of a CEO's leadership, and maybe a CEO that doesn't come from sales or marketing, maybe doesn't appreciate all of the if, I guess, nuances that need to go into it, or if they do come from one background and not the other, are there things you would advise CEOs to be thinking about of how to kind of strike that right balance on the relationship between sales and marketing, alignment of goals, anything that kind of should come from the top?
Yeah, I think it's important that the top really acknowledges the importance of both sales and marketing. I think in product-led organizations, it can be really easy to overlook those groups as not being as important as the product development or the engineering team. And while the engineering team is critical to the success of any startup, uh, you need people to understand what your company and your product's about, and what's in it for them. Why would they want to subscribe to or buy your product? And that's the key role that sales and marketing play. Um, I think what I have learned over the years is to put everything in a business case situation. So if we invest X amount in this type of marketing, we expect this to translate into this much sales opportunity, which then should be this many deals using kind of the math side of things. I personally subscribe to more of like an art and a science of forecasting. And I think earlier on in my career, I would have relied more on it just makes sense. How are you not seeing this? Like, of course you need to talk about your brand and then like what we can do with these products to help people. Like, why isn't this landing? And I've learned over the years, well, the business case around that's really important, because if someone hasn't sat on that side of sales and marketing, they don't understand what's possible. And so you have to walk people through it, just like I need to be walked through engineering and development things sometimes. Well, you have to build this first before you can add on these bells and whistles that you're saying are important to this client. Like, we hear you, but this infrastructure has to be in place first. And I see the same thing with sales and marketing. It's like, okay, I see you guys wanting us to sell X, Y, or Z, but we have to tell the bigger story and lay a brand foundation before we can do some of these other things. And so it's just learning how to talk to everybody in your organization, because people definitely show up with their own perspectives. And especially when they're experts in them and they've been working at it a long time. There's a respect for that. And then okay, let me help you step back from this and look at the bigger picture. And this is why we would recommend this, that, or the other.
Yeah, I think that is very well said. And because of that, I think a great place for us to wrap up the conversation on such a great note. So thank you so much, Cheryl, for everything that you've shared with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Natalie. This was fun.
If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Great question. Best way to reach me is probably on LinkedIn. Cheryl Jordan-Aguilera. I'm the only one. So you should be able to find me and then find our company, Official AI.
And thank you too to everybody listening. I know I loved hearing about so much of what Cheryl shared in our discussion around the M&A lessons learned, AI usage, and what that's looking like in today's world. Some of the outdated sales leadership mindsets, and how do we kind of work through that and support our companies as best as possible. So if today's episode gave you any valuable insights, and I'm sure that it did, please share this with a CEO, founder, or go-to-market leader in your network. It's these kinds of conversations that help us all scale smarter, build stronger, and create resilient go-to-market engines. So thank you again, Cheryl. And this has been another fantastic conversation on Shift and Thrive. I'll see you all next time. That's a wrap for this week's episode. For show notes and more, visit shiftandthrivepodcast.com. A special thank you to our sponsor, Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service marketing agency to help B2B companies fuel their growth. For more information on Magnitude and to get your complimentary transformation readiness assessment, visit magnitudeconsulting.com/getready. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.